Hello, you are listening to Decipher This, a podcast about music and technology from Ensemble Decipher. My name is Eric Lemmon.
And I'm Rob Cosgrove.
And today we are speaking with Hiva Sedaghat, a choreographer, dancer, and performance artist from Iran. She's well known in the underground contemporary dance scene in Tehran, and her choreography brings together her personal, social, and political experiences through interdisciplinary pieces that engage with dance, theater, and video. Her works Through the Skin, Aji Dahaka, and Room have been presented at festivals across Europe, the Middle East, and the US, including the Beirut International Platform of Dance, the Zurich Theater Spectacle, the Spring Dance Festival, the Emruz Festival, the Movement Research Studio Presentation, and Global Forms Theater Festival. Her artistry lives somewhere between personal quotidian events and common human emotions. Through it, she creates a space for improvisation, imagination, transformation, and communication through the lens of the introverted body of an Iranian woman. Vulnerable at times, resilient at others. She'll be joining us this October 23rd at Roulette Intermedium in Brooklyn, where we'll be collaborating on a work titled The Sound Sleep Has Been Shattered. Thanks for talking with us today, Hiva.
Hey, thank you for having me, and so good to see you both.
So usually when we kick off these podcasts, we usually try to get a little background on the artists and where they came from and how they came to do what they're doing. So could you give us a little bit of an idea of how you got into dance and choreography?
Yeah, sure. So I started contemporary dance through the underground scene in Tehran. And since many people might know or not, dance have been illegal in Iran for more than 45 years right now. So that's why I'm saying the underground scene in Tehran. So the first time, it was one of my teacher who actually studied dance in Europe, and then he came back to Iran and he gave us workshops and classes. It was the first time I encountered to the performance art and contemporary dance. And yeah, it was very attractive for me since it was the first time that I could connect with my authentic and true self, which is something hard. I mean, we usually don't have it in Iran, and it's so hard to connect with the true self since we have lots of layers and lots of, we need to pretend who we are not. So after that workshop, I took more classes in techniques and improvisation, which we have limited opportunities in Iran. And sometimes we were lucky that a guest choreographer or artist came to Iran and offer us classes and workshops. Yeah, after I was continue this journey with taking classes in contact dance, contemporary dance, improvisation. When I met a group of people, and later they become my close friend, and we found a group of Maha. And I mean, although people came from different backgrounds like theater or acting, what we mostly called ourselves experimental artists, since basically we create and perform through our experiences, our personal experiences. And through one of the events and underground festivals and one underground events that we had in Iran, it was a founder of a company in Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon. The company's name is Maqamat. So he saw one of our pieces in Tehran, and then after that he invited us to his festival in Beirut. So it was the first time that I professionally had a performance in the international dance festival, which called Bipod. And after that, the other performances caused after that in European festival, and we got invitation from some European festival after our presentation in that Bipod festival.
I think that we could just actually get into some of your work. And one of the most recent projects that you've been working on is a piece called Dance of Eternity that deals pretty directly with the atrocities that are being committed by the current Iranian regime. As both mourning rituals and, as you said, dance have been banned in Iran for the last 45 years, the work reclaims bodily agency by recreating a traditional mourning dance. Can you speak more about why this work is so important to you and why artistic expression is especially important at this time?
Yeah, I believe actually the important part of any culture is related that how people relate to the concept of death and how people are mourning actually. So what was really touching me in that time, things happen in Iran and the protests and regime killings, the people, was the videos that I saw in social media that the parents are dancing on their children's grave while crying, but with dancing that they are celebrating and honoring their death and how they died through the fight to the freedom actually. So later I was doing some research and I understand this very ancient ritual which call it chamar. It's happening in a region in Iran, Lorestan, and it's a very ancient ritual. It has its own type of music, it has its own type of dance that how people honor and celebrate their loss. And they also connecting to the nature as a higher source to ask help from nature to bring back the harmony and to balance to their life because they lost it with losing their family or beloved ones. So yeah, it was something actually clicked with me that how people with this current situation, they are kind of maybe unintentionally doing the same tradition that we had from many years ago. Yeah, that's type of the mourning ritual. It was something that I never seen before. So for me, it was very interesting that how they are connecting with that ritual, connecting with that celebration to both do their mourning ritual and also continue their fighting because they are doing the dance, which is an illegal thing in Iran. So they continue their path of their children who died. Yeah, so in that piece, I used the original music that local people use in that type of ceremonies and lots of symbols in their movement, lots of the rituals that they are doing, which represent the Iranian culture. Yeah, it was really important for me to kind of represent how Iranian are connecting through their culture, even after through the Islamic Republic that they've been banned to connecting with their traditions, their culture, they've been banned to doing dance rituals. They're still doing the same after many years. So it was a way to both talk from what's happening in Iran and also present some part of the culture.
Yeah, and I got a chance to watch the video of this. I was wondering if you could kind of describe how in your choreography you're playing with the ritual itself and evoking it or, summoning the spirit through your choreography.
Yeah, as I said, I used the original traditional and folkloric music. And then also I inspired lots of the movements that they are doing in this ritual. Meanwhile, it was another very heavy stuff that really touched my heart. So I also inspired by that. For example, we have a type of prayer in Iran, azan, that it's called 5 times a day from the mosque in Iran. And with that prayer, actually, it's called people to come and pray. But unfortunately, through these very sad events that happened in Iran, with the first prayer in the early morning, the regime actually executed one of the victims. And with that sound of the azan, instead of calling to do the prayer, people get the anxiety and the stress from, okay, with this sound, someone else is going to be executed. So I used the sound of azan and then the praying, the original version of the praying, and then that praying actually going to be very chaotic, and through some shaking movement and some very chaotic movement, I changed the concept of the prayer, which you need to be calm and connected. Instead, it's chaotic and stressful.
Yeah, so gonna switch now to talking about The Sound Sleep Has Been Shattered. And I know that, this most recent work of yours is quite directly political. And we had some conversations before this about the intentions around The Sound Sleep Has Been Shattered. But I thought that we've been talking about the piece abstractly and from the lofty and philosophical perspective. This is the work that we'll be doing in Roulette. And we've also been talking about more practical things related to the production. But perhaps Rob and you could describe the work for us, how it functions, what you're doing on the plate, how that translates into sound. And for the listeners, here today, if you want to watch this work, we'll post a link on the podcast page for you to check out later.
Yeah, this piece has actually different layers. And so the first layer is the interaction between the sound and the movement. And that's why we choose the metal plate to reflect the sound. And then we had contact mic under the metal plate to capture the sound of the movement. And then, and a conceptual layer is focusing on the liminal state between sleeping and waking. And I mean, of course, also because of the nature of the contemporary art, everyone has their own understanding from the piece. So like, it's the body of Iranian woman and the metal plate might, brings and represent like another things as well. So for me, the concept started from the state between dreaming and waking or sleeping and waking. And it's that liminal state actually kind of make me feel that I'm stuck in that state, in that liminal state, to not able to fully go back to sleep and not able to fully awake. Yeah, this state actually has the very, very unique quality for me, which makes like all of my relations to the reality, like my conception of time or space, which was my room, or the sound that I was hearing. In that liminal state, everything becomes very specific and has the very unique quality, actually. So that was the desire that I wanted to share about this liminal state, and I started to create this piece too. Then later I had a chance to re-experience that liminal state and get to know more about what that kind of feeling of being stuck wants to tell me. So yeah, I choose the metal plate also. I mean, first, as I said, to capture the sound, and also to represent that how that state is very intense and uncomfortable for me. And then the quality of my movement, which first, because mostly I'm lying on the metal plate, so then like all of my body can touch the plate. Most of my movements come from that lying, so most of my movements is from my chest and my belly, so also it represents that this state, this experience, it's coming from really inside me. And then also the movement and sound like really interacting with each other and building through the performance. And there are lots of like repetitions in my movement, and the sound, which is, I mean, not very pleasant sound. So it's also like represent that liminal state, which kind of make me stuck in that uncomfortable state. When I actually look back to that time that I created this piece, I'm thinking that this feeling of getting stuck must have a wider aspect in my life, as I was experiencing that in my body. I mean, it's definitely has like wider aspect in my life, because I mean, also living in body of the woman in Iran, we need to cover from the external level, we need to cover ourselves until the very deeper level. We need to pretend something that we are not, I mean, from our beliefs, from our behaviors. So I think that state between sleeping and being awake was a reminder for me that when the day starts, when I'm going to wake, there's a duality and there is a contrast in my life. So it was the way that in that liminal state, it tried to communicate to me that, yeah, I'm living this duality right now.
I'm also thinking about, the fact that this plate is, I mean, the current version of the plate is 8 feet by 4 feet, right? It's not a whole dance floor. And so you literally, if you are to remain on the plate and continue to produce sound with it, you are bound to this small surface area, at least for a dance platform, right? And like, maybe unless you're a tap dancer and you're just doing your thing. But it seems like, that's this other space of stuckness, right? Is that you cannot actually like careen out across the border of this plate according to the way that you've performed it and conceived it. I think that's an interesting thing now that you've been talking about the stuckness. And so, Rob, what's going on with the audio? Like, what are you doing pulling Hiva's movement from the plate and then piping it back out there?
I can just say, riffing off of what Hiva was talking about, just with the concept, that's how kind of we built the sound world around it. Because what happened is Hiva brought to us this piece that she had worked on called Room, and we kind of built The Soundscape Has Been Shattered off of this concept and expanded it and, made it its own production. The thing that really struck me about what Hiva was thinking about is this like sleep paralysis is essentially what she's talking about, where you're trying to wake up, or your mind wants to wake up, but your body won't let you, sort of thing. So there is definitely this, again, this kind of duality between the body and the mind, and like also like a disconnect between what's happening with the mind and what's happening with the body. So essentially what we got to is that kind of the music and the sound would be representative of kind of what the mind was doing, this like nervous kind of chaotic energy, and the body is kind of showing the struggle of not being able to move. So when me and Taylor started developing the audio, we wanted to take, elements from what the body was doing. So we were sampling, we were taking all this input from contact mics that are on the underside of this 4x8 metal sheet that she's dancing on. And we have that sampled and manipulated in certain ways, processed in certain ways, and it's eventually kind of thrown around the room. It develops its own embodiment as it moves around the room, just in the same way that an idea or a nervous feeling can kind of develop its own way of moving about your consciousness. We wanted it to kind of move about and kind of develop its own way of being. And in addition to that, we included sort of a feedback loop into these microphones. So we brought the microphones into a mixer and we did what's traditionally known as no input mixing, but we do have an input in this situation. So what Hiva is giving to us, the signal that Hiva is giving to us is being run through this feedback loop, and that's getting pushed out back towards her. And so what this creates is a bunch of these different systems, just very similar to what's kind of going on with your mind in this surreal state, this dreamlike state that's very tense. These ideas are coming in and out of focus. They are feeding back on themselves, and they're kind of moving around your mind in different ways, in ways that you can't control.
And Hiva, you're reacting to the sound as it develops too. So this is a improvised work partially. So in a way, it sounds to me like there's this other aspect of the system where there's the feedback loop of the plate, yes, but there's also the feedback loop that's being mediated by Hiva's understanding of the sonic world that's being generated.
Yeah, right. So we do have some structures, like some states that we know how we are going to start, how in the middle of the piece, what are we doing and how it's going to end. But of course, like most of the piece is improvised in this state. So, basically I initiate the sound in the beginning, which is the raw sound from my movement on that plate. And then it's going to process and respond to me. So basically, I describe it as like a conversation. Like after a while, you don't understand like who is talking and who is questioning, who is answering. So for me, it becomes, like at the same time, we need to kind of read each other's mind, like we are really interacting with each other. So both sides, we really need to be present to able to listen to each other and to respond to each other. So after a while, it's not, I don't say like how should I react to the music, because it's really integrated. It's working really together.
of these ideas around interaction and conversation that we talked about in The Sound Sleep Has Been Shattered and liminal spaces are really interesting to me. I think we talked about this at one point, your work Aji Dahaka. This is a work for dance, projected video, and electroacoustic music. And you talk about it as an exploration of mutation, morphosis, and transformation from reality to imagination, loneliness to communication, and from motion to stillness. And, we've been talking a lot about dichotomies, but with liminal spaces, right, there's this gradation, there's this in-betweenness to liminal spaces that we're focusing on in The Sound Sleep Has Been Shattered. And your work generally engages with audiovisual media as well as embodied media. I'm wondering whether you think of other traditional dichotomies that are traditionally associated with digital media as shades of gray. So I'm thinking about virtuality and reality, or virtual reality and reality, and then presence and telepresence. And then a more classic dichotomy is digital and analog. But these things are not necessarily opposite binaries, right? There's space between them in lots of ways.
Yeah, so this piece, Ajida Haka, is about the transformation and or inevitable change in very moment to then be able to adjust to our wide and crazy world that we live in. So the idea of the piece actually comes from a Persian myth, which is a king that, through a process, actually, he changed to a three-headed monster. And he actually gets very far away from his truth, his reality, his truth, and he becomes something else. And then we were questioning ourselves that how does all the happenings and the news that we are hearing in this crazy world right now, how these keep changing our body, our mind, and spirit till we might get transformed like the story to something else that is far away from our truth, is far away from our reality. At the same time, we also got inspired by another Rumi poem which said that the anger and greed cause the man diplopia, which is a kind of disease that makes a person to see everything too. So it means that there is no concept of the reality. You can't see the truth, basically, because you just see a projection or the image. So with that concept also, because that piece was through the pandemic and the only way that we could communicate together was through the camera, through the video. So we also use this concept that everything we are saying is a projection or is an image of reality. And then we can change the reality in the way that we want, and totally everything passed through the camera, the video. So we couldn't have the understanding of what is real and what is not. Yeah, so we work with both concept of how different things, affect us and can change and transform us, and how at the same time this technology and how we can connect with each other through the technology could also change the reality. So how our current human, how is dealing with inevitable changes and effects of the new world, actually.
So just a little description for listeners here is that you basically had a dance partner who was following you around, and this is the reflection of you. And then you also had a projection done by a video artist that was also upon the dancers that were on the stage, in addition to the electroacoustic music that was going on. So could you describe a little bit of how your interaction with the dance and the video projection that was both at times upon you and also on the back wall, how these things work together to evoke the mythology that you're describing?
Yeah, so it's me and my work partner Mitra. We are the two dancers in this piece. And then my friend Amir Hossein, who is a videographer and visual artist. So yeah, we start, it's just, you can see the two dancers on the stage, and little by little one camera added, and then we have a projection on our back. So there's a moment in the piece that camera and projector are facing each other, so you can see our image, like how you put two mirrors in front of each other, and then you can see like thousands of images. So yeah, it's what happened in the piece. So we use like all of the, however we can send this message of changing and transformation, and like how with the image we can also play with the understanding and perception of the audience. I mean, there is a point that you can't see where is the body of the dancers and where is the image, so we just keep playing with this, changing the concept of the reality all the time.
Going along with these dualities and these relationships, a lot of the time when we were working and we were collaborating on Sound Sleep Has Been Shattered, we often were talking about the relationship between the movement and the sound. And so traditionally in dance, in almost every form of dance that I can think of, the music is in a lot of ways controlling what the dancer is doing, and the movements of the dancer are to be synchronized with what is happening in the music. In Sound Sleep, we are subverting that dynamic. We're kind of changing this power dynamic where the dancer is actually creating the sound and controlling what the sound is doing. And that's kind of the jump off point. So have you done this in other pieces?
So yeah, like you're saying, it's that the classical and traditional ways that the dancers are synchronized with the music, but actually in contemporary art, contemporary performance art, it's kind of common to, I mean, either dancers not following the music or the music not following the dancer. But actually in this piece, I mean, as I said before, I don't think that the sound and the movement are separate from each other, because basically, I mean, when you're seeing the dancer, when you're seeing the movements, you can visually see the movement. And when you're hearing the sound, it's like you can hearing the movement. Yeah, they're like working very closely together. So it's the different layer of the movement that audience can connect with, to seeing it or to hearing it. But if you're asking, like in another pieces that I've done, it's mostly how we work with the composer. That I mean, composer comes to the rehearsals, and it's not something that the composer create a music for the piece. It's like how we all creating together something which is very not separated. So, for example, for the piece for Hiva Sedaghat, first it started from our voice, and then the composer came and like he actually listened to what the sound that we are using and like what was the sound of our body like hitting each other, like when we had contact, and like the sound of the body moving on the floor. So he got inspired by all of those sound that we already created in the raw version of the piece without the music. So yeah, usually I prefer that during the process, actually, the music composed for the piece, not after when it's finished, and, you know, like composer come and actually add something external to the piece, because I believe you cannot separate them.
Well, it was just to say, from our perspective, it was such a joy to have you come and have you give us all these sonic triggers or sonic inputs for us. That was a way of working that we hadn't ever done before. So it was really fun to work with that and, yeah, develop a conversation and kind of improvise in that context. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, same for me. It was such a joy to work with you guys, and yeah, looking forward for our performance as well. And, you know, I did this performance before in Iran, but each time it's a different, and right now with this new energy, new perspective that you guys bring, I mean, every version is a different and unique version. So I'm really looking forward for our performance.
Thanks so much, Hiva, and thank you to all our listeners out there for listening to today's episode of Decipher This.
Thank you.
We will be joined by Hiva on October 23rd at Roulette Intermedium. Put that in your calendars. The hosts today were me, Eric Lemmon, and Rob Cosgrove. Intro and outro music were made by me, and Decipher This is edited and produced by our main man, Joey Bohigian. See y'all.